keeps it. Cuts upfield for the touchdown. He then mocks the touchdown celebration of Cam Newton in the end zone. Then kisses the bicep after a 4-yard touchdown run.
All right, another highlight from the 49er victory over the Panthers. And, we got to play these highlights while we can. We may not be able to play very many highlights next Monday, so let's squeeze them in while we've got the opportunity. And I hate to do this, doing some housekeeping here while we're on the air, but I cannot get the call screener software to open up, so I don't know what we need to do about that. If we can get some attention on that, that would be great. Now, we talked about what's going on with this Chris Christie and this bridge gate. Remember, we talked about the fact that the Speaker of the New York City Council, the leader of the New York City Council, handpicked by the mayor, who's a communist, de Blasio, he's said quite openly, I love the heavy hand of government. He's a big fan of the heavy hand of government. He believes in state control, big government, government tyranny, he believes in it, openly advocates for it. So he's not even a socialist. He's really a communist when you get right down to it. And the hand-picked speaker is somebody who shut down the Brooklyn Bridge as a part of the Occupy Wall Street movement. But all the scandal is about Chris Christie and his staff, who didn't even shut down the bridge. They just created this congestion. And so they're accusing Chris Christie of being a bully. Remember, I got no brief. For Chris Christie whatsoever. I think it would be a horrible standard bearer for the Republican Party in 2016. It's my fervent hope he does not get the nomination in 2016, because it would be even worse than Romney. Him as a candidate, we would have a worse result than we had with McCain and Romney. Those of us that are conservatives and would like, that's not about Republican, Democrat, those of us that would like to see a conservative in the Oval Office, this would be a complete and utter and total disaster, and it would represent the final nail in the coffin of the Republican Party. That's what they seem oblivious to, the Karl Roves and all those types. But, you talk about somebody who is vindictive. I'm looking at a piece here, AmericanThinker.com, actually citing a piece in The Hill, which is a political blog. It's a new book about Hillary Clinton's 2008 presidential campaign. Speaking of presidential campaigns, even the European media now is talking about the fact that the Obama's marriage may be over. This goes back to a story on the National Enquirer, which everybody tends to dismiss, but remember, they were the ones that broke the story about John Edwards and his mistress. And the National Enquirer is out there with a story about how Michelle's already filing divorce papers or planning for divorce, and she's going to move to Chicago and live in the deal and all that. So I have no idea whether any of that is true, but the European media apparently is giving enough credibility that they're now doing stories on the possibility that the Obama's marriage may be on the rocks. So I just mentioned that for whatever it's worth. I'm not saying I have any information that indicates that it's true. It's just now become a story, not just in the American media, but also in the European media. And then, again, this is another rabbit trail thing, but we talk here on this program about how we ought to discriminate against certain forms of sexual immorality. I believe we ought to do it. We ought to discriminate against every form of sexual expression other than the marital intimacy between a husband and a wife in marriage. We shouldn't support, sanction, subsidize, promote, accept any other form of sexual intimacy, period. Marriage is the one relationship where sex can be enjoyed with society's unconditional approval. And every society needs that. They need one place where the society, all of it together, says this is the setting for sexual intimacy. We believe in sexual intimacy. We believe it's a gift of God. And here is where it may be enjoyed with society's unconditional approval. And that is marriage. Everybody accepts that. Everybody understands that this is what husbands and wives do when they come together. It's appropriate. It's right. We support it. We believe in it. Nobody has a complaint about it. Now, what's happened over in France is that the First Lady in France, apparently President Hollande in France, has been having an affair with an actress. And his live-in girlfriend, he's not married to her, the media referring to this live-in girlfriend, her name is Valérie Trierweiler. The media have been referring to her as the First Lady of France, but she's not. She's not a lady of any kind. She is engaging in fornication with the president of the French Republic. So she's not a lady at all. But she has been devastated by news of the affair between her male lover, the president of France, her live-in lover, and this French actress. And apparently they've got some kind of love nest just blocks away from the Elysee Palace. And you go back, France, the president of France had four children by another mistress, a mistress that he had prior to his current mistress, had four children by her. They never married. He gets elected. She leaves him, and that's when he starts living with his current live-in girlfriend, who had to check into the hospital. She was so devastated, so heartbroken over the fact that he was unfaithful to her after she had helped him to be unfaithful to his first girlfriend. I mean, it's just a complete soap opera, but she's been absolutely devastated. What does that tell you? She thinks that kind of behavior ought to be discriminated against. You know, it's one thing to say in theory, yeah, whatever people want to do, that's their business as long as they're adults and as long as they're consenting adults. It shouldn't be any of our business. And they think that until it happens to them. And all of a sudden, when they're the ones that have been betrayed, they're the ones that have been abandoned, then all of a sudden it's a completely different story. I remember one survey a number of years ago, people being asked about adultery, whether adultery was bad or good. And 46% of them said, hey, no big deal. It's not a big problem. It's adults, it's consensual, can't stop people from doing what they're going to do. But when these same people were asked, how would you feel if your husband or your wife was unfaithful to you? 88% of them said that would be really bad. I would not be down with that. I would not be for that. I am against that. That's adultery and it's bad. So when it happens to me, it's bad. When it happens generally out there in the cosmos, then people don't seem to care. So anyway, and you know, the interesting thing along this line is there is this college which has hired a brand new president. It's Alabama State University. The new president there is Gwendolyn Boyd. And the reason I mention this story is I love it. I think it's great. I commend this university for what it's done. And it shows us that this can be done, that it is possible for sexual standards to be restored to our culture. Her name is Gwendolyn Boyd. She's the new president of Alabama State University. And she's actually signed a contract with the trustees of the school that forbids her from allowing a lover to cohabitate with her in the presidential home, which is being provided to her by the university. This is a historically black university in Montgomery, Alabama. So she actually has a contractual relationship with the university where she cannot cohabit with anybody in the home that's provided to her by the university. Here is what the contract says. This is quoting, "For so long as Dr. Boyd is president and a single person, she shall not be allowed to cohabitate in the president's residence with any person with whom she has a romantic relation." So that's it. And she happily signed this thing, and she's a smart lady. She earned a master's in mechanical engineering at Yale University. She worked for years at Johns Hopkins University, one of the leading medical centers in the entire world. So that just proves, ladies and gentlemen, that it can be done. Now let's play that second soundbite from Rudy Giuliani. And, you know, and Giuliani, he's a moderate Republican, not conservative when it comes to moral values. So he is likewise in Chris Christie's camps. He's right there with Karl Rove, doing what he can to help with Chris Christie. But he makes a valid point, what I was touching on in the first segment. When you look at this bridge thing, yeah, you got traffic congestion. Yeah, that's bad. Yeah, the EMTs were delayed. Nobody died. Even the family of the 91-year-old woman said, no, it wasn't because of the congestion that she died. It was an inconvenience. People were not happy campers, but nobody died. No elections were changed by the outcome. Americans didn't die, but you have Benghazi, 4 Americans die, IRS, a fraudulent election of our current president as a result. And this is what Rudy Giuliani has to say about this dust-up with Chris Christie.
You know, Martha, that's always kind of simplistic after something like this happens. You know, how could it happen? How could you not have known? You know, how did President Obama not know about the IRS targeting right-wing groups, massive numbers of right-wing groups.
But this is
obviously going after
traffic.
his
This
political
affects
enemies, right?
everybody. This seems very different.
Well, that affects a lot of people, and the reality is things go wrong in an administration. And frankly, he was in campaign mode at the time. During campaign mode, you miss a lot of things. You're not paying as much attention. We see that with Benghazi. I mean, I can give you plenty of examples. Every administration, every president, every mayor, every governor, something goes wrong below them, and then the press asks, "Gosh, how do they not know? How do they not realize?" The reality is, he says he didn't realize. He says he didn't know. I think it's pretty darn credible. He wouldn't make this blanket denial unless it's not true.
So I tend to agree with Rudy Giuliani about this. I don't think Chris Christie knew. I think his staff did this without his knowledge, without his approval. Maybe they felt like they had some kind of tacit support from Governor Christie, but I just don't think that his fingerprints are directly on this thing. And, of course, if there's some smoking gun out there, then he's completely toast as a political figure. But, Giuliani's point is, hey, look at your own guy. Look at your own guy. How could he not know that the IRS was targeting Tea Party groups? How is that possible? How is it possible that an agency, how is it possible he could meet hundreds of times with the member of the IRS, the official at the IRS, in charge of all these tax-exempt organizations? How is it possible he didn't know? How could that happen? How is it possible he didn't know about the security lapses at Benghazi? How is it possible he didn't know about the security warnings that were issued well ahead of time? We don't have enough security at this compound. How could he not know that? How could he not know that no resources were sent to help the 4 Americans that died at Benghazi? How could he not know that it was an orchestrated terrorist attack? So Giuliani's point, I think, is well taken. You look at the Bridgegate scandal, yeah, that's pretty tawdry, that's pretty shameful, but that doesn't compare whatsoever to what we see with the IRS and with Benghazi. And here's the difference. Chris Christie has fired people. Barack Obama has not fired a single solitary soul. Focal Point, AFR Talk, back in 2.